Welcome back to Newsmakers with Mike Briggs. This show's been on since 2008. Newsmakers, can you believe it? It was the very first show ever on Central Valley Talk, and we are still doing the show. You know what we do on Newsmakers is we talk to people making the news. And this time of year, it's those people running for office, candidates for office, from governor down to city council, board of supervisors, a whole bunch of people running for Congress in districts that have just been changed around, lines have been redrawn, and it's a lot to figure out. Now, the last election we had about almost 2 years ago, a presidential election, there was a lot of talk about election fraud. And did people cheat, or did they take votes away, or was it fair? Well, in California, one person is in charge of making sure we have fair elections, and that is the Secretary of State. So we're going to have, and by the way, if you're a candidate for any office, we want you on the show. You could agree with us or disagree. We always give a good and kind interview to whoever comes on the show. So our first guest in the realm of Secretary of State is, I don't want to introduce her yet. I'm going to show you a little video, Rachel Hamm. And let's just go to this video. It explains a lot.
This is a fraud on the American public.
A woman accused of filling out her dead mother's ballot.
Police are now dealing with what they believe were instances of mail theft where ballots were swiped in the process.
A new investigation has found hundreds of thousands of questionable ballots sent to LA County voters.
Thousands of ballots stolen and cast fraudulently in the last election. But California's liberal politicians won't pass voter ID, even though an overwhelming amount of voters support it. California, it's time for something different.
They're afraid of the Rachel Hamms of the world.
I am backing her to run for secretary.
My name is Rachel Hamm. I'm a wife and a mother. That's always been my highest calling. I'm also an author, a life coach, an influencer.
Best-selling author Rachel Hamm. She's the host of The Rachel Hamm Show.
I have built my life and career on telling hard truths. That's why I'm running for Secretary of State. This is what I'll do as your Secretary of State. Require voter ID, bring back paper ballots, eliminate mail-in ballots while keeping traditional absentee ballots, bring back single-day voting, aggressive voter roll cleanup, unfettered watch reforms, and a 2020 election audit if those currently in power don't have the integrity to do one. Californians deserve to know that their elections were and are free and fair.
And there you have it. You know, a lot of candidates have ideas on how they're going to fix the world and how they're going to fix voting and how they're going to make elections fair. But that candidate ticked off the ways. We're going to do this and this and this. Let's go and meet this candidate, Rachel Hamm. Welcome, Rachel Hamm, to Newsmakers.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So elections, were they unfair?
I believe they absolutely were unfair, but not just in 2020. As I've looked into it extensively, I have found that it's maybe been several cycles that we've had unfair elections, and it's very concerning to me. We don't have a free republic if we don't have honest elections.
Right, we should have fair and honest elections. And by the way, I want to let you tell us about yourself, but I got so many questions, I'm going to jump into one.
Okay.
Why would anybody be against showing an ID at the poll? How could that be unfair?
Virtually no one is. So that's a very even issue. Everyone's for it. So Republicans and Democrats alike. In fact, a new poll just came out. I think it was 87%. I mean, it's just gigantic. Right. It's like everyone agrees. It's like the one thing we can all agree on. We should show ID. It's not racist, right, no matter how many times they say it, right? So left and right, we all agree on that. So the real question is, why isn't it being done?
Right. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, because the people who are in office are benefiting from fraud.
From fraud, okay. If you have to show your ID when you go to the poll and really match, I mean, there could still be a few people who sneak through somehow, but that would clean up a lot of stuff.
It would, yeah.
I don't know if you watch this show. I watch it every day. It's called The View. And it makes me pull my hair out. I yell at my TV. But that Whoopi Goldberg said that, hey, why don't we just have people show their ID? And then I think they talked to her later about how we're not supposed to say that because she doesn't seem to be for that anymore. Mm-hmm. So you're running for Secretary of State. Are you? Where are you from? What's your background?
So I grew up in the Central Valley, Madera, Fresno, Clovis, mostly Clovis. And I was a stay-at-home mom for most of my adult life. We have 4 sons, and 3 of them are adults now. 1 is in high school. And so I spent most of my life raising sons. And I just felt like that was, for me, the most important thing I could do to produce productive members of society, which I have successfully done. And then okay, this is a little weird, Mike. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a little weird. I'm a prophetic dreamer, so I see things in my dreams before they happen. Okay, so July 13th, 2019, I saw COVID in my dreams.
Oh boy.
Very clearly. Very clearly. I mean, details. Like what I saw happen over the last 2 years was almost all in that dream. There's one element that I still haven't fully seen talked about yet, but all the rest of it was real clear. And the main point of it was that this illness was brought in to take away freedom. And so shortly after the first March lockdown, I began talking loudly and obnoxiously about, yes, this is an illness. I'm not denying it's an illness, right? But it's about taking away our freedom. Don't exchange freedom for safety. And so I started a YouTube show at that point to talk about my concerns, and it almost felt like I had this like pent up frustration that I needed to get out. So I started my show and began talking to all kinds of different people, and that led to me meeting political people who also basically felt the same, and knew what was actually happening. I'm talking about really high level people, and some of them contacted me. That led to a variety of what I would call divine appointments and inspirations, where you just feel like you're called to do something. Right. And I never would have thought I was going to do anything political, but I felt like at that point I was being called to step up and run for office to save my country, literally.
Now, whether you believe in masks or don't believe in masks, you believe in lockdowns or you don't believe in lockdowns, everybody's got to admit we've never had our freedoms limited as much as we have during this one period. I would think. I mean, actually closing down our business for over a year, it's incredible.
And closing churches and schools, and I mean, just violating rights left and right for the sake of safety. And I just wonder what our forefathers would say.
Yeah. Now you're running for Secretary of State, and you're on a mission here.
Yes.
And you have very well developed ideas.
Thank you.
We have a lot of candidates in here. They don't really have ideas. But tell us how you would change our electoral system here in California.
Well, so there's a variety of things that I think are super important that would have to go through the legislature, but I would advocate for them. Like recently, I went to Sacramento for a meeting where the current Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, was advocating to the legislator to remove our ability as Californians to recall any elected official. I don't know if you know that she's doing that.
No, I did not know
She is trying to make it where we cannot recall anyone. So that's what she was doing. She was advocating for what she felt was right. Okay. Now I violently disagree with that we should be able to recall our elected officials, but I would advocate for, first and foremost, voter ID, like you mentioned at the beginning. It's just such common sense. It's something we all agree on. And I really want every single person in the legislature to answer, why are you not implementing that? When it's the will of the people, we've spoken loudly and clearly, and everyone agrees. And so I would really push for that. I also would like the machines to be looked into. I have personally got to meet with 2 cybersecurity experts who hacked the voting machines and showed me how they did it and showed me how they can manipulate the votes.
They took the challenge and they did it.
Yeah. And so because of my personal firsthand knowledge of that, I would immediately want an audit to be done on the machines, and then I would decertify them if indeed we find that they are.
There should be no doubt that they should certify the machines each time. Now, let me ask you this. Is this the first election or the second where everybody gets a mailed ballot?
It's the second, because the recall election they also did.
What do you think about that?
I think it swings the door wide open for fraud. It's absolutely a nightmare.
I know people who said, oh yeah, I filled out my husband's ballot who passed away. I mean, they think they're being patriotic or something, but it's really fraud. It's a very serious thing.
It's a felony.
It's a felony.
Yeah,
that's right.
No, it's very dangerous.
Well, tell us about your campaign. By the way, I looked at your campaign website. It's very good. I looked at your Facebook. I looked at is it called Getter?
Getter?
What is that?
Getter? Yeah.
Getter.
Getter. It's kind of, like well, I don't know. I think when Twitter went so crazy with shutting people down, they started to get her to try to provide a place where people could just have novel concept, free speech.
Yeah. Now, anybody that wants to know anything about Rachel Hamm can go to these sites. Just type Rachel Hamm in Google and all those sites pop up, I think.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, you wrote a book. Tell us about that.
I did. I wrote a book called Life Beginning, about my own life, because I've been through some pretty bizarre and unusual things that at first I started writing for therapeutic reasons. And then I started realizing there was more to it. There was, again, that kind of that divine providence thing happening where it could help a lot of people. And so I decided to take what I was writing for personal reasons and turn it into a published book, which became a best-selling book, actually. And so it's helped a lot of people. One of my greatest joys in life is hearing from people who have read my book and have been influenced by it.
Now, your campaign, you're going to have to campaign in L.A. and San Francisco, all over the state. What are your plans?
Oh, I've already been doing that, yeah. So I actually started really early, and I've been already all over the state. And what I'm finding is that California is not as big and blue as they say that it is. Right. In fact, there's been a big shift. Even people who were really big and blue and liberal, are shifting. We do still kind of have that intense, strong left people that are going to maybe always be that way. I don't know. But there has been a big shift in people who consider themselves to be moderate left-leaning. And now after the COVID stuff and their lives were really devastated by it, they're now saying they're moderate right-leaning. And so there's a big shift in the state, even in the liberal places.
Right. And the things you're saying aren't really that partisan. You're saying some very common sense ideas that should appeal to anybody.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, everyone should want honest elections.
Yeah. Yeah, who wouldn't?
Yeah.
And as you said, the majority of the people are in favor of showing an ID at the ballot.
Yeah, so legislature, why are you not doing that?
Right. So you would provide that leadership. Now, Secretary of State also makes corporations or regulates corporations. What else do they do?
They oversee the historic stuff, the archives.
Archives, that's right.
Yeah, and then they also do notary stuff. Those are the main four things.
It's a big job. It's a big job. And you would not be the first Secretary of State from the Central Valley, right?
Yes.
Bill Jones.
Yes.
He was the Secretary of State, and he served our area well, and he did it for 8 years. He's really was the first real modern Secretary of State, brought us into a lot of modern areas.
And yet, in California, you would think everything would be so modern, right? The Secretary of State is kind of still in the dinosaur ages with several things. We have to file paper filings instead of digital, and there's definitely some things that will need to be brought up to speed, which I fully intend to do.
I was very shocked. I recently filed to run for an office, and that I couldn't do it online, that I had to print it out, fill out things by hand, or wet signature, they call it, and mail it, and wait for them to mail back a 6 or 8 digit number. And it did seem very archaic. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's actually some things you have to print out large amount of documents. My treasurer was saying, I'm taking in several boxes of documents today to the Secretary of State's office. And I thought, what a waste of paper and ink. And I mean, come on.
This is 2022 for goodness sakes. Well, listen, if anybody wants to reach you and say, get involved or send a little money or something like that, because it's expensive to run.
It's so expensive. So I'm running for a statewide office, right? So I'm having to campaign the entire state, and no one pays attention to Secretary of State. Everyone's looking at who's the governor, who's the senator.
And it's just like running for governor. It's that many people. You're talking to the same
amount of people.
So if somebody wants to help or get involved, where should they start?
Yeah, so you can go to RachelHammSOS.com, which Rachel is the right way to spell it, RACHEL, and then Hamm is HAMM, and then SOS, which is for Secretary of State. .com. So RachelHammSOS.com. You can sign up to volunteer or donate $5, $10. Anything is helpful, as you know, having done several campaigns already, every little bit helps.
Yeah, it really does. Now, we don't know who our Secretary of State is. No, I guess we do. You said her name.
Shirley Weber.
PhD, by the way.
Yeah, she's a nightmare, actually. She was an assemblywoman before, and she's responsible for some of the most liberal legislation we have right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there's probably be a whole bunch of people running because that's how it works now. But Rachel Hamm is from here, from the Valley, and we don't get a lot of Valley people as our statewide representatives. We haven't for a little while, and it's high time we do that. Rachel's a great person. The last thing, anything else you want to add before we're out of time?
Well, I had 2 Republican competitors, and they both have dropped out.
You scared them out, didn't you?
I am the only Republican running for Secretary of State for the state of California.
And this is one of those open primaries anyway, right? So
Yep.
the top 2 vote getters
Yep.
will go to. What if one person gets 80% of the vote? It'll still be the top 2 vote
Still
getters?
top 2.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
So I have a good chance of making it through the primary
Right.
with being the only Republican.
If you're watching, you didn't get the information, Rachel Hamm, SOS.com, you forgot the name, like I always forget names, call me here at Central Valley Talk. I'll put you right in touch with Rachel Hamm campaign. Thank you for coming. You're the first Secretary of State candidate ever to be on our show.
How exciting. Thank you.
We'll be back with more newsmakers right after this.